Welcome to Maps to Insight. Through years of teaching writing and researching insight, we became aware of the astounding potential that writing holds to help us reach insight. Our goal is helping students, teachers, and writers of every kind tap into that amazing connection. While nothing discussed in this video can or should replace what is already known about writing, it does add to what we know considerably. In fact, many genres of writing, journaling, storytelling, poetry, essay, even research, provide excellent frameworks for incorporating the kind of insight targeting strategies we're going to outline here. That said, let's talk about what insight actually is. In most circles, insight is a broadly used and rarely defined term. But we've spent years researching the immense revelatory power that distinguishes and characterizes it. Simply put, insight is vision that explores beyond the surface, looking specifically for eye-opening connections hidden beneath that surface. The surface, in this case, can be anything that comes between us and the connections that integrate our world. It can be something as common as the words we use every day to define our world and distinguish its parts. Actually, insight is less about seeking definitions and more about exploring relationships, particularly hidden relationships. So insight, when we achieve it, has the capacity to permanently alter not only the way we experience our world, but also the way we explore its fearful, wonderful, and marvelous connectedness. From our perspective, insight is invaluable. Everything meaningful hinges on it, and it's not as elusive or difficult to achieve as some might think. We know this because our research focused on specific patterns of thinking that actually produce it. Taking what we learned and wanting to help others reach for insight, we developed practical maps for pursuing it. Maps that essentially make your own groundbreaking thinking possible by guiding you to insight through your own words and experiences. We like to think of Maps to Insight as a connection mining tool designed to help people find and articulate the profound but hidden relationships that promote insightful discovery. To help one do this, our maps use key principles that insightful thinkers throughout history have relied on to make far-reaching connections. These are rewarding connections that beckon us to explore beneath the surface, the face value of our world. Here, to explore, to combine, to think, to see in selective, non-traditional ways elicits deep, meaningful insight. That penetrating way of seeing that typically eludes us. Not because insight is some muse randomly selecting and abandoning its hosts, but because we don't purposefully target it to begin with. Pursuing, identifying, and explaining the deep, fertile connections that elicit insight challenges and develops our direly underprivileged creative potential, one of humanity's greatest gifts. Maps to Insight helps those who desire insight by actively prompting a perspective that deeply integrates and connects where surface-level separation and division abound. Think of this deeper perspective not as gazing into a vast sea of confusion, as some might see it, and get discouraged, but think of it rather as seeing into a pool of hidden connections, one rich in ideas, where sunken treasure abounds. How can something as simple as a map make this possible? Because our map designs make probing vision and reflection possible beyond the surface-level distinctions we typically can't get past. Such distinctions, as they solidify with everyday use, actually form a kind of barrier, where we can become unwittingly suspended, where penetrating insight becomes difficult or impossible. Our maps help and inspire users to go deeper, to a level where hidden connections become more apparent, Using a three-dimensional approach that seeks out far-reaching connections, they actively target and facilitate insightful thinking through the untapped depth and richness of your own words. Everyday words that together form a vast network of connections. Now, the far-reaching connections these maps explore don't diminish individuality or necessary distinctions. They simply reveal a more elusive, complementary potential for integration, a kind of expansive network or third-dimensional depth that is yet to be acknowledged. But getting ourselves beyond the two-dimensional surface that limits our understanding is not easy or natural for most of us. It requires shedding some baggage that comfortably buoys us at the surface. Biases, preconceived notions, truths we've reconciled through analytical thinking typically leave us floating above the deep sea of relationship. Removing those trusty life preservers and diving in with determination to plunge deeper requires setting our sights beyond the surface. Let me show you by using the principles in one of our maps to explore a word like love for insight. Love is a word ripe for exploration. In particular, because it carries a lot of the baggage I just mentioned. Depending on your experience with love, you might honestly think of it as a doormat. We can all relate to that more diminishing view of love. But what would happen if we considered love in ways that help us shed our surface-level biases, our limited vision of love? Instead of a small object that we could stand on to wipe our feet like a doormat, we could expand our notion of space altogether when it comes to love and reach for more. We could set our sights on something much bigger than a doormat, something we don't merely step on to wipe our feet, but something we can actually stand in, something that surrounds us even, like a field. Now, a field can be many things: a large expanse grown up in flowers or even weeds. It can be teeming with crops or dry and barren. In other contexts, it can be a school of thought, like mathematics, science, art, business, or psychology. It can be invisible but all around us, having tremendous influence, like a force of gravity or magnetism. It can be infinitely bigger than us, yet be exploited, cultivated, and even enriched by us. How we consider, how we view something like love depends to a large degree on our regard for it, often what we unwittingly attach to it. When we stop to consider, our regard for something has an entire history. That history is attached to our experience, what we've learned over time, what we've been taught by those we trust. So if we choose to view love, in this case, as a field, that new perspective would actually bring it into a new light for us. Frame it in such a way that challenges our old, more limited regard for it. That seemingly simple act of reframing conjures up properties dormant in our conceptualization of the word love that we may not have otherwise considered. Why does it work? Not because of anything we're forcefully attaching to the word love by examining it as a field, but because of what's already there, in the more inherent, hidden properties of the word. Properties we've purposefully activated by using the word field to cast it into a new light and reconsider it. This is where hidden life emerges. If we can think of our personal experience and limited view as sticking to the surface of our words each time we create a point of reference for our understanding, we can better appreciate the deeply inherent substance of the words that must also exist outside of us, our experience, our limited view. That inherent substance, however concealed by our attachments, is critical to an understanding that takes us beyond ourselves. Maps to Insight is a glorious dive outside the box for that substance. The unobtainium yet to be extracted from a sea of properties and connections that our words hold in the layers of their storied evolution. It's an extensive, far-reaching mountainous evolution, where if we choose the path of exploration, our words in an instant flash of insight can offer us profound revelation. Like our Facebook page, Maps to Insight today, and follow us as we use our maps to pursue hidden connections, deeper understanding, and valuable insight, like we just did in our example using the word love. Then go to our shop and set your own course for insight. For $5, you can download our printable maps with instructions and examples. Explore with us. Post and share your own insightful discoveries. We look forward to hearing what insight you discover beneath the surface of your words.